Please close your eyes. Inhale and exhale slowly and deeply. Relax your body. If you feel any pain or discomfort at any area of your body, bring your awareness to that area and mentally say, I let go. I am not the body. The body is just a vehicle of the soul. I am the soul. I am that I am. Visualize all your thoughts, or visualize your whole body disintegrate and disappear. All the cells in your body disintegrate and disappear. All the pain and discomfort disintegrate and disappear. And what remains is just brilliant white light. Inhale slowly and deeply. Exhale slowly and deeply. Inhale slowly. Exhale slowly. Now bring your awareness higher to your thoughts and your emotions. Just observe each and every thought that comes to your mind and fades away. Mentally say, I am not my thoughts. I am not my emotions. Thoughts and emotions are just products of the soul. I am the soul. I am that I am. Visualize all your thoughts and emotions disintegrate and disappear. All your fears, worries, frustrations disintegrate and disappear. What remains is just brilliant white light. Inhale slowly and deeply. Exhale slowly and deeply. Inhale and exhale. Now please bring your awareness higher to your crown chakra located on top of your head and mentally say to the Supreme Being, to Grandmaster Shuakuk Sui, to Lord Mahaguruji Mailing, to all the great ones, holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to all the masters of the Theosophical Society. Thank you for all of your priceless blessings, for divine light, divine love, and divine power, divine guidance, help, and protection, inner healing and physical healing, good health and happiness, prosperity and abundance, spirituality and illumination. Thank you in full faith. Inhale slowly, inhale all the blessings. Exhale slowly and be aware of your whole body. Inhale slowly, exhale slowly. Inhale slowly, inhale all the blessings. And exhale slowly. Now please put your two hands in a namaste position in front of your heart. Be aware of the presence of each and every person in this session and mentally say, Namaste. Thank you for being here. And when you are comfortable, gently open your eyes with a big smile. Namaste and welcome to the second session. Okay, so just give me a second to share my screen. Okay, so in the last session, we discussed about the general composition of the astral body. We discussed about the chakras. We also talked about Kundalini. So today, we are talking about the thought forms and the physical life, the sleep life, and if possible, dreams. So we start with thought forms. As usual, if you have questions, please put in the chat so we can discuss about them. So the mental, based on the book, the mental and astral bodies are those chiefly concerned with the production of what are called thought forms. Okay, before we continue, as usual, just a reminder that we are studying the book. So whatever we are studying here is based on the knowledge and the information provided by the author. And sometimes the book says man, but the man means human. It doesn't mean like male and not female. So it's like inclusive. Okay. So the mental and astral bodies are those chiefly concerned with the production of what are called thought forms. A purely intellectual and impersonal thought, such as one concerned with algebra or geometry, would be confined to mental matter. On the other hand, if the thought has in it something of selfish or personal desire, it will draw round itself astral matter in addition to the mental. If furthermore the thought be of a spiritual nature, if it be tinged with love and aspiration or deep and unselfish feeling, then there may also enter in some of the splendor and glory of the Buddhic plane. Okay, so in the first paragraph, we said that the thought forms are the products of mental and astral matter because most of the time the thoughts we create are not purely mental. There are always emotions involved. That's why the mental and astral bodies are involved. But if the thought is purely mental, like when we are thinking about algebra or geometry, mathematics, then it may only remain as mental. You know, it's like purely mental matter. If it's selfish, personal, mixed with emotions, then it's a mix of mental matter and astral matter. But if it's very unselfish, then it may have some splendor and glory of the Buddhic plane. Okay, now each thought form produces two kinds of effects. One is a radiating vibration and second is a floating form. We will discuss about this one by one. So the vibration set up in and radiating from the mental body is accompanied with a play of color, which has been described as like that in the spray of a waterfall as the sunlight strikes it. This radiating vibration tends to reproduce its own rate of motion in any mental body on which it may impinge, to produce thoughts of the same type as those from which the vibration originated. Okay, so what does it mean? It means that when someone is thinking about a certain thought, a certain emotion, creating certain, thought, there is a vibration created. And this vibration, to a certain extent, to a certain radius, affects the mental body of whoever in that radius. Okay. And it creates same kind of nature, quality, not the exact thought. Okay, so I will give you examples shortly. These radiating vibrations become less effective in proportion to the distance from their source. Not like a radio. If you play a radio or a recorder, the closer you are to the radio, you hear it louder. But the further you walk from the radio, you hear it less and less. So the effect of this thought vibration is similar to this. If you are near to the source, you feel it much more. If you go further away, you feel it less. Okay? Now, the distance to which a thought wave can radiate effectively also depends upon the opposition with which it meets. Waves in the lower types of astral matter are usually soon deflected or overwhelmed by a multitude of other vibrations at the same level, just as a soft sound is drowned in the roar of a city. Okay. So, how far this thought vibration can influence the other people depends on, number one, how strong the thought created was. Like if a person with a bigger aura, with a bigger mental, emotional body creates the thought, the influence is more. But if a person creates, with a smaller aura and vaguer thought creates it, then it's less effective. It also depends on the nature of the thought. If the thought belongs to a lower vibrations, like it's a thought of, like, let's say stress, anger, or irritation, or things like that, because there is so many of such vibrations in our current societies, the thought will get deflected or overwhelmed by all these lower vibrations. Okay, but if the thought is like a bit purer or in higher vibrations, then it may influence even more. Okay, because there is less opposing energies basically. Now we said that the thought vibration creates the nature similar to the nature of the thought. Now what does it mean? And how it's different from a thought form. Okay, so because in the top we said a definite thought produces two effects. One is a radiating vibration, another one is a floating form. Okay, so what is the difference between that vibration and the form? We will discuss it further later, but just to give you an idea, let's say if someone with a certain religion, let's say someone who is Christian, sitting and praying deeply to Mother Mary. So this person is creating devotion thought forms because of prayer to Mother Mary. So around this person, there is a vibration in motion. Okay, so this vibration will influence whoever in that radius. Now let's say there is a Hindu standing nearby. Now maybe the Hindu doesn't believe in Mother Mary. Okay, we are just giving an example, yeah. But the Hindu is a devotee of Lord Krishna, for example. So the thought form of devotion that this Christian to Mother Mary is creating, when it reaches to that Hindu, it will create devotion to Lord Krishna instead. Because only the quality of devotion is being transferred from the person to the other, and not the exact thought. That is the difference between radiating vibration and a floating form. Okay, we have all experienced that. Let's say you are in a very crowded LRT or bus, and then two people start arguing with each other in front of you. They are not even arguing with you. They are arguing with each other, but it hurts, it affects you. You don't feel good also just being in that neighborhood, just being in the presence of the two person arguing or fighting. On the other hand, if two people start laughing about something, okay, you don't even know what they're laughing about, but you may find yourself smiling because that thought form of laughter or happiness, affect us in that radius, even though we don't know what they're laughing about. So in this way, our presence can actually be healing to the people around us. So whatever thought, whatever emotion we create, we are affecting one another. Okay, so let's say in your family, even if you are the only one meditating, you are the only one interested in spirituality, by creating nice thoughts, nice emotions, unselfish thoughts, loving thoughts, happy thoughts, our presence can be healing to our family. But if, let's say, we are depressed, we are pessimist, we are sad, our presence can also affect the other people around us. Even if we are not talking, even if we are not saying anything to them, by just being in our presence, they get affected by us because of that thought radius, the thought vibration that is created around us. Okay. Now the second effect is that of a floating form is caused by the mental body throwing off a vibrating portion of itself, shaped by the nature of the thought, which gathers around itself matter of the corresponding order of fineness from the surrounding elemental essence of the mental plane. This is a thought form, pure and simple, being composed of mental matter only. If made of the finer kinds of matter, it will be of great power and energy, and may be used as a most potent agent when directed by a strong and steady will. Some of you have done the workshop Kriya Shakti by Master Shwakok Sui. So this is the Kriya Shakti workshop is all about creating thought forms. Thought forms that, of course, help us to achieve our goals and wishes, but also thought forms that help other people also and the humanity. Okay, so this is basically connected with the thought forms. Now, if the thought is still only mental, the matter that it gathers around itself is only of a mental matter. Okay, but if it's a bit selfish and it has, you know, impure emotions connected with it, then it will draw also matter of the astral, astral matter as well, elemental essence of the astral plane. So when the man directs his energy towards external objects of desire or is occupied with passional or emotional activities, a similar process takes place in his astral body. A portion of it is thrown off and gathers around itself elemental essence of the astral plane. Such thought desire forms are caused by kama manas, the mind under the domination of the animal nature. Manas dominated by kama. Kama means desire, and in the beginning of the book, we said we will use it both for desire and emotion. And manas means mind. Okay, so most of the thought forms that we create are actually kama manas. Only maybe just the percentage is purely manas or purely mental, but mostly it's kama manas. Such a thought desire form has for its body the elemental essence and for its animating soul the desire or passion, which through it force. Both these thought desire forms and also purely mental thought forms are called artificial elementals. Okay, so the thought forms we create, they're called artificial elementals, and in some schools they are called entities. Just to emphasize that they are alive, they can affect us and other people positively or negatively based on the nature of the thoughts. So is it clear until now? If any question, please put in the chat. So both mental and astral elemental essence, which possess a half-intelligence life of their own, respond very readily to the influence of human thought and desire. Consequently, every impulse sent out either from a man's mental body or from his astral body is immediately clothed in a temporary vehicle of elemental essence. These artificial elementals thus become, for the time, a kind of living creature, entities of intense activity, animated by the one idea that generated them. They are in fact often mistaken by untrained psychics or clairvoyants for real living entities. Okay? So it means every thought we create is actually very powerful. It's an artificial elemental, and it's like a living creature. So it can affect us and others. Therefore, knowing that, we need to be more responsible towards the thoughts that we create. Okay, especially because we are on the spiritual path, especially because we are doing spiritual activities. So our aura is keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Therefore, the thoughts we create are becoming stronger and stronger, and therefore influence a greater number of people, or influence with greater, what you call, impact. So maybe previously, if you are working and someone asks you for something, you just tell them, I don't know, whatever. They may not get hurt. But now when you tell someone, I don't know, whatever, they feel hurt. And then sometimes we are a bit, puzzled. How come I didn't say anything? What happened? This person is so sensitive. But actually it's because the impact is becoming more. So we need to be a bit more careful with other people. Okay. Just to share one example, one example, many years back, I was driving with a friend to go to a certain center, and he drove his car in a place that it was not a parking lot. So I just looked at him and said, are you sure you want to park here? Because this is not a parking lot. This happened some years back. Then this person told me, it's okay. It's about like more than 2 years. I'm always parking here. Nothing happens. Don't worry about it. So we came out of the car. We went to the center. We did some, I don't know, meditation or whatever. We came back. There was a ticket. And then he just looked at me and said, it's more than 2 years. I'm parking here. Nothing happened. You created the thought. And it was funny, but at the same time, a bit sad, you know. But I'm just sharing this to say whatever we think, positive or negative, creates a certain influence in the world. Okay, so we are going to talk about this in this chapter. So thus, when a man thinks of a concrete object, a book, a house, landscape, etc., he builds a tiny image of the object in the matter of his mental body. This image floats in the upper part of that body, usually in front of the face of the man, and at about the level of the eyes. It remains there as long as the man is contemplating the object, and usually for a little time afterwards. The length of time depending upon the intensity and the clearness of the thought. If a man thinks of another person, he creates a tiny portrait in just the same way. Okay? So thought forms have been usefully compared to a Leyden jar, a vessel charged with static electricity. The jar itself corresponding to the elemental essence and the electric charge to the thought emotion. And just as a Leyden jar, when it touches another object, discharges its stored electricity into that object, so does an artificial elemental. When it strikes a mental or astral body, discharge itself or discharge its stored mental and emotional energy into that body. Okay, so this is an image of the Leyden jar. So it gets charged by electricity, and when it touches another object, discharges itself into the object. So the thought forms or thought common as thought emotion or artificial elementals are being compared with this, because these thought forms, when they reach the mental body or astral body of another person, they discharge themselves into the body of the other person and create a similar thoughts. Okay, now there are a few principles that are important to understand about these thought emotion forms. The principles which underlie the production of all thought emotion forms are: number one, color is determined by the quality of the thought or emotion. In the previous study session, when we discussed about thought forms, we discussed about the colors a lot. Even the first session of this book, we discussed about colors. Number two, form. Form is determined by the nature of the thought or emotion. Okay, so love thought form creates a certain shape. Anger thought form creates another shape. Jealousy thought form creates another shape. Next, clearness of outline is determined by the definiteness of the thought or emotion. Okay, so this also we discussed in the last session. If the thought is vague, the outline is vague also. And therefore, the power of the thought to influence the outside world becomes less. But if the thought is very clear, the outline of this thought emotion form will be very clear. And therefore, the power also increases. And the fourth one is the lifespan. The life period of a thought form depends upon, number one, its initial intensity. And number two, the repetition of the thought, either by the generator or by the others. Okay, so that's why if you have done Kriya Shakti, you know that there is a certain procedure we need to continue and continuously do to create very strong thought forms. Okay, so, and it's The prerequisite is arhatic yoga. Arhatic yoga because of increasing the intensity and the procedure of creating the thoughts so that we increase the repetition and create a more powerful thought form. So thought forms of similar character are attracted to and mutually strengthen each other, making a form of great energy and intensity. Furthermore, such a thought form appears to possess instinctive desire to prolong its life and will react on its creator, tending to evoke from him renewal of the feeling which created it. It will react in a similar, though not so perfect manner on any others with whom it may come into contact. Now, if you notice, many of our thought forms, when you create it, you may forget it for a while. After some time, the thought pops up again. And then you think about it again. And then after some time pops up again. And the thought forms become, these thought forms become stronger and stronger, especially let's say the negative thought forms we have about ourselves, or the programming that we create for ourselves. We create a certain thought, so we give birth to this thought form. And then the thought form have this instinctive desire to prolong its life. Okay, it has elemental essence as its body. So therefore, the thought will pop up again and again in us and also in some other people to create them repetition so that it can increase its lifespan. So in that way, in that case, we either need to disintegrate the thoughts or the programs that are not serving us anymore, or we need to create an opposite thought. Okay, means an opposite program. Okay, now for our present purpose, we may classify thought forms into three kinds. Number one, those connected solely with their originator. Number two, those connected with another person. And number three, those not definitely personal. Okay, we will discuss one by one. If a man's thought is about himself or based on a personal feeling, as the vast majority of thoughts are, the form will hover in the immediate neighborhood of its generator. In addition, each man also serves as a magnet to draw towards himself the thought forms of others similar to his own. Okay, you most probably have heard about the law of attraction, like attract like. So whatever thought we create, we also tend to draw towards ourselves similar thought forms of others. People who are becoming sensitive have sometimes imagined in such cases that they have been tempted by the devil, whereas it is their own thought desire forms which are the cause of the temptation. Okay, so many times it happens that we create a certain thought and then certain incident happens. And then we say, I knew this would happen. But sometimes we don't realize that we may be the one who actually created this incident in the first place. Okay? Or sometimes we create the thought, or even sometimes watching a certain program or reading something, create a certain thought in our head. And this thought will later create a temptation. Then we think a certain outside devil is actually tempting us, but it's actually our own thought form. So each man looks out upon the world through his own thought forms and thus sees everything tinged by them. Okay, that's why sometimes these thought forms are compared with having a colored glass, like sunglasses, colored sunglasses. So after some time, we start looking at the world through them. So everything becomes colored based on our own initial thoughts. Moreover, as each man leaves behind him a trail of thought forms, it follows that as we go along a street, we are walking amidst a sea of other men's thoughts. If a man leaves his mind blank for a time, these thoughts of others drift through it. If one happens to attract his attention, his mind seizes upon it, makes it its own. A man therefore is not responsible for a thought which floats into his mind, but he is responsible if he takes it up, dwells upon it, and then sends it out again strengthened. Okay, now what does it mean? It means, let's say there are so many people outside, like whenever you go to a mall or you go to the street, there are so many people there. So everybody continuously thinks. They say we create about 60,000 thoughts per day. So these thoughts remain behind, people. So whoever is walking is like we are walking in a sea of different thoughts. Now, if we are thinking of something else, our mind is already busy with something. So the other thoughts, they don't have the opportunity to discharge themselves on us. But let's say if your mind is blank, you are not thinking about anything, there is a possibility that you notice these thoughts. Some of these thoughts, they just pass, because you don't have similar vibrations or interest inside you. So they just pass and they don't affect you. That you see them, but you don't act upon them. But sometimes when you see this thought in your head, you take it as your own. We take it as our own. We think, and then we send them out even stronger. Okay, so the book says, we are not responsible for the thoughts that come to our mind, but we are responsible if we take them up inside and send them out stronger. Okay, especially if they're negative, because the majority of thoughts are not really positive or unselfish. Okay. That's why I think I read this in the basic pranic healing book, that living, when Grandmaster was talking about the meditation on twin hearts, so he said meditation on twin hearts has purifying effect, and one is to purify us from the thoughts of the city, because living in the city itself, we are affected to a certain degree. So therefore, we need meditation on twin hearts, which acts as like a spiritual shower. No, we cannot continue without having physical shower. We cannot say, I only take shower only every Monday and not take shower the rest of the week. The body after some time starts smelling. Similarly, meditation also needs to be done every day or regularly, because it's like a spiritual shower. Clean all these thoughts that we pick up from others. Many of the thoughts that come to our mind is not even ours. We pick them up from somewhere, someone, from a place, from a program, and then we make it ourselves. This is very funny, but when I was, I think, 17 or 18 years old, I was doing some English classes to improve my English. And then I had this teacher. She was just sharing, her personal feelings with us or experiences. At some point, she just shared that she has this obsession towards time. So she always thinks it's late. It's very interesting that from that sharing, I picked up that thought form and it became mine. And until very long, many years, I had the same problem. I was thinking it's always late. And even when I'm resting, I was thinking I'm wasting my time. I have to do something. I'm still quite busy, I don't have much time to rest, but it's not like if I have time to rest, then I feel uneasy and guilty about it. But previously, just because of her thought, a simple thought she just shared, it became mine. And it was affecting me for so long. So sometimes where you picked up the thought, but sometimes you may not even know where you picked up the thought. You just pick it up and it becomes yours, and then it affects us. Okay, so question from Atma Sundar. How do we know if the thoughts we register in our brain is created by ourselves or picked up from the environment? Okay, based on my experience, okay, this needs training, this needs mindfulness, this needs awareness. Okay, so nowadays, whenever certain thought comes to my mind, you know, like for example, I'm working and I'm fine and I'm happy, suddenly a certain thought comes, which makes me feel sad or stressed or something. Then I pause and say, okay, let's think about it. What happened? Why I'm having these thoughts? Because I was just happy. Okay, I was just working and I was fine. So why suddenly my mood changed? Then I start thinking. Sometimes I notice it was because of an SMS, for example. Because if something very interesting with the mind is, let's say you read an SMS, something concerns you, you feel stressed, then you forget about the exact incident, you keep the emotion. So it has happened to me before also. So after some time I notice I'm stressed. Then I think, where did I pick up this thought? I was fine. What happened? Then I noticed, but that was after reading that, SMS. Then I start thinking, is that SMS that important? Does it matter now or in a day or in a week or a month? Then sometimes the answer is no. Then I say, okay, let go. Then I will be fine. But if I don't really think back and see why this thought got created, where did I pick it up from, then I keep the emotion inside of me for some time. And I think, it's like you think it's yours. So maybe a suggestion is, if suddenly a certain thought comes to your mind, then you start thinking, go back, like think from where this thought or emotion or mood change came. Sometimes you may notice nothing happened, just a thought came. So maybe someone was thinking in your neighborhood. Maybe someone was thinking about you. Maybe you picked it up from the environment or something. Okay, but it needs mind. That's why mindfulness is becoming very important. In our Hatha yoga, Dhyan meditation is very good. So you become sensitive to the thought vibration. You become sensitive to your emotions, to your feelings, to your inner state. So if something suddenly happened, a change happened, you immediately notice that what happened? I was fine. What is this? Then you go back. Sometimes you realize you are not even the one who made it. Or sometimes you may realize you made it, but you made it for a petty thing. So just disintegrate it. Or you made it for something real, so you can do something about it. Okay, so let's continue. So if the thought form is directed towards, so we just discussed about the thought forms that we create about ourselves. Now, second one is the thought forms that we create about another person. So if the thought form is directed towards another person, it will go to that person. Either of two effects may then result. Number one, if the aura of the person concerned, there is material capable of responding sympathetically to the vibration of the thought form, then the thought form will remain near the person or even in his aura. And as opportunity serves, automatically discharge itself, thus tending to strengthen in the person that particular rate of vibration. If the person at whom a thought form is aimed happens to be busy, the thought form hangs in the vicinity until the man's mental body is sufficiently at rest to permit its entrance, when it immediately discharges itself. Number two, if on the other hand, there is in the person's aura no matter capable of response, then the thought form cannot affect it at all. It will therefore rebound from it with a force proportional to the energy with which impinged upon it and return to and strike its creator. On the other hand, the thought form of love and of desire to protect, strongly directed to some beloved objects, acts as a shielding and protecting agent. Okay, now let's talk about this. So if we create a thought form about another person, our thought will go to the person. And if the person has some similar vibration inside, the thought will stay there and wait for an opportunity to discharge itself. Now, if the mind of the person is busy with some thought, the thought stays there until the mind is at rest. Then it discharges itself. But if the mind of the person is at rest, it immediately discharges itself and it strengthens in the person the same quality. Okay, now if we send a negative thought, let's say, to a person, and the person doesn't have any similar vibration in his or her aura, so the thought form cannot discharge, it bounces back to the creator with even more force. So it will affect the creator. Now, what does it mean? Number one, if you're upset about the qualities of a person, don't meditate on them. Don't keep thinking about the negative qualities or characteristics of someone because we make it even worse. So let's say if your spouse, your friend, your partner, your children are behaving in a certain way and it affects you, don't keep thinking about it. Like my husband or my wife is short-tempered. Keep thinking they are short-tempered. We are actually magnifying that quality in them. Instead, we need to create an opposite energy. So think about them being loving, patient, for example. So we are actually creating an opposite effect to help them improve. I was watching this TV show, and in the TV show, this person said that in Texas, they have a saying that if they talk negative about someone, they say bless more. So let's say, a group of friends are talking and then they discuss negatively about some negative qualities of another friend. Then at the end they say, okay, let's bless more, so that they neutralize, the effect. So another thing is, have you heard in especially spiritual societies, they say, don't think negative about a spiritual teacher. Even Grandmaster says, if you have a photo of the guru, don't hang it in your living room so whoever comes see it, because knowingly or unknowingly, they may create negative thoughts about the guru, the person, the spiritual teacher. And if they create negative thoughts about that spiritual teacher, they are actually hurting themselves, because that spiritual teacher don't have similar negative qualities in their aura. So if we criticize them, of course, if they are really a spiritual teacher, not so-called teacher. So if we criticize them, our thought form will go to their aura, cannot be discharged, come back to us and hurt us. So we need to be careful about that. Okay, Sargis is asking, for number one, it's like a silent conversation. Effect is either real time or delayed. For two, what goes around comes around. Yes. I have seen some people, they, in the spiritual path, they start criticizing a certain spiritual practitioner who is like, let's say, a senior one. Okay. And then they get sick. And after that, they say, that person sent a psychic attack to me. But actually, we need to think more objectively. If we create a certain negative thought about a person who doesn't have that kind of attitude or character, actually, of course, the negative thought that we send will come back to us. It's not that the spiritual practitioners send the psychic attack to us. Maybe it's our own thought form which is bouncing back. Okay, someone says, who is a spiritual teacher? Is anyone taking a spiritual topic? No, I mean someone who doesn't have certain negative qualities or characteristics already inside them. So that's why we said not a so-called spiritual teacher, is a real one, spiritual practitioners. Now that's why Grandmaster always emphasize on character building. Okay, so if a person has done lots of character building and purified themselves to a great degree, they don't have much of negative thoughts or vibrations in them anymore. So if we criticize them, our thought form will go to their aura. It doesn't have any similar qualities to discharge, so they come back to us. Gita says, I want to hang more of my spiritual guru's photo. It's good to hang the spiritual guru's photo in your house. The suggestion was don't hang it somewhere that many people see, or have a cover for it. Because there are some people who may not think the way you think, they may not yet be so much into the spiritual path, yet maybe they see a spiritual teacher or practitioner and they criticize the physical form, the body or whatsoever. So they may harm themselves by doing this. So being a being of love and compassion, thinking about others, we need to think selflessly about other people also. So if they come to our house, maybe we can take them out, or maybe we can cover them. If we know that they are a kind of character that they will criticize without knowing, something like that. Okay. Deepa says, so from point 2, when our aura is filled with love or other positive emotions, then negative thought forms can affect us. Yes. So that's why there is a saying in Christianity that my goodness is my shield. So if we do a lot of character building, spiritual practice, meditations, we purify our aura. Then we don't need to care about what other people think about us. Of course, out of love, we don't want them to get hurt also. So if you notice someone is sending you negative thoughts, we can bless them instead of letting them get, hurt themselves. But it means the more we purify ourselves, the more we are shielded from other people's negative thoughts and emotions, because those negative thoughts and emotions cannot affect us because there is no similar vibrations inside our aura. Thank you. Next, a thought of phenomenal energy and concentration, whether it be a blessing or a curse, calls into being an elemental, which is practically a living storage battery with a kind of clockwork attachment. It can be arranged to discharge itself regularly at a certain hour daily. This one should be hour daily, or upon a certain anniversary, or its discharge may be contingent upon certain occurrences. This is like a program. Okay, if we create a certain thought form, very strong thought form, this thought form becomes like a program, and it can affect people even in a certain, regularity, in a certain day, in a certain anniversary, in a certain something, occurrence. A sufficiently strong wish, a concentrated effort of intense love or hate would create such an entity once for all, an entity which would then be quite disconnected from its creator and would carry on its appointed work entirely irrespective of later intentions and desire on his part. Its power could be to a considerable extent neutralized only by sending after it thoughts of a contrary tendency. Okay, so that's why I said in Texas they say if you talk negative about someone, bless harder. So if we create a certain intense love towards someone, or intense hate or intense emotion, we create this entity, and the entity is so strong and will continue affecting that person, for example, unless we neutralize it by creating another thought. Or we are a bit lucky, actually, not a bit, we are very lucky actually to know about psychotherapy, so we can actually use psychotherapy techniques to disintegrate. Okay, questions. How can we make the rebound to creator to be positive thought for a negative thought? We can bless them. Okay, now if you have done psychic self-defense shields, in psychic self-defense workshop by Master Chokoksu, you learn different shields, and you learn that when we create a certain shield, we create another layer around it to actually transmute the energy to higher vibrations. Okay, so but by blessing them with so much love, with pink energy from the heart, with so much love, then we can actually change the energy, transmute the energy. Okay, another person is asking, that's how black magic works? Yes, it can be a way which creates a certain program to affect a certain person. Okay, we don't go to black magic too much now, but if you attend the psychic self-defense workshop, there is a lot of explanation about psychic attacks and like magic and things like that and how we can protect ourselves. So the vast majority of thought forms are simply copies or images of people or other material objects. They are formed first within the mental body and then pass outwards and remain suspended before the man. A painter, for example, builds out of the matter of his mental body a conception of his future picture, projects it into space in front of him, keeps it before his mind's eye, and copies it. Similarly, a novelist builds in mental matter images of his characters and then, by his will, moves these puppets from one position or grouping to another so that the plot of the story is literally acted out before him. A playful nature spirit may ensoul the images and cause them to do things other than those which the author intended them to do. More frequently, a dead writer may perceive the images and being still interested in the craft of writing may mold the characters and influence their actions according to his own ideas. Okay, we will talk about the last paragraph in a chapter called Life After Death. So we will discuss about what are the things that we can or that can be done once the soul leaves the physical body. Okay, so it means, let's say a painter, an artist, an architect, a novelist, a musician, whenever they think about something, like they first visualize it in their head. Like, for example, I'm architect by profession. So whenever we are designing something, so we think about it and we create it in our head. Okay, so it's like the image is already created in your head. And then we use that image to actually draw the plan or make the 3D or whatever. So similarly, a painter does the same thing. The novelist builds in the mental matter images of the characters and then in their head move them here and there until they reach to something that they like. And as we said, sometimes maybe that writer may see them and then help the writer, or based on their interest may change sometimes the story. So later the author, the novelist may say, oh, this is not exactly what I aimed for, but this is nice. Can there be a thought form made of only emotional astral matter, but not mental matter? If yes, example. We are saying thought form. So usually when you think about something, you are using your mind, your mental body. Okay, so whenever you are think of something, you are using your mental body. But sometimes this thought is accompanied by an emotion. So sometimes the thought form is purely thought, or sometimes it's a mixture of thought and emotion. When you're not thinking about anything, you're just feeling. I'm not sure if anyone has example, can you share? Is that possible to feel something but not think? So if you feel something but not think, maybe then it's just astral matter. But usually whenever you feel something, you also think. So that's why usually the thought forms are a mixture of thought and emotion. If an example comes to my mind, I will share. So the last one, our third class of thought emotion forms consist of these which are not directly connected with any natural object. and which therefore express themselves in forms entirely their own. Okay, so the first thoughts we say was about an object. The second one is about people. Third one is not about object, nor about people. It's just a thought on its own. So these thoughts will get a shape, a form entirely their own. Thought forms of this class almost invariably manifest themselves on the astral plane, as the vast majority of them are expressions of feeling as well as of thoughts. Such a form simply floats detached in the atmosphere, all the times radiating vibrations similar to those originally sent forth by its creator. If it does not come into contact with any other mental body, the radiation gradually exhausts its store of energy and the form then falls to pieces. But if it succeeds in awakening sympathetic vibrations in any mental body near at hand, an attraction is set up and the thought form is usually absorbed by the mental body. Okay? So vague thoughts or feelings show themselves as vague clouds. Definite thoughts or feelings create clearly defined forms. Okay, now let's look at some of these forms. A thought of protective affection becomes somewhat like a bird, with a central portion of yellow and two wing-shaped projections of rose pink. A thought of universal love becomes a rose pink sun with rays in every direction. Okay, sometimes let's say a mother or father, a parent thinks lovingly about their son or daughter and they are thinking about protecting them. So this thought form, which looks like a bird with yellow central portion and two pink wings, will go actually to that child and serves as a protection for the child, like an angel. Sometimes some clairvoyants see them, they may think they're angels because it's like they have wings, something like that. But actually they may be the thought form of the parent to protect the child. Thoughts in which selfishness or greed are prominent usually take a hook form. The hooks in some case actually clung round the object desired. Should be, I think, cling to the object desired. Okay, so in the last book we discussed about thought forms, we discussed about this also. Arka was sharing about this, that the thought forms of selfish or greed or even jealousy, it's like they are like a hook. So examples, the top one is peace and protection, the bottom one is selfish greed. You see, it's like a hook. Now, as a general principle, the energy of a selfish thought moves in a closed curve and thus inevitably returns and expands itself upon its own level. An absolutely unselfish thought or feeling, however, rushes forth in an open curve and thus does not return in the ordinary sense, but pierces through into the plane above, because only in that higher condition with its additional dimension can it find room for its expansion. But in thus breaking through, such a thought or feeling opens a door, as we might say symbolically, of dimension equivalent to its diameter, and thus provides a channel through which the higher planes can pour themselves into the lower, often with wonderful results, as in the case of prayer, both for the thinker and for others. So it means if our thought is really unselfish and pure, and we are, let's say, praying for mankind, we are praying for someone, we are praying even for ourselves, this will go up, especially if it's unselfish about the humanity and others, this will move upward and it's like opens doors for blessings to come down. So we will look at one image later on. Herein lies the highest and best part of the belief in answers to prayer. On the higher planes, there is an infinite flood of force, always ready and waiting to be poured through when a channel is offered. The thought of perfectly unselfish devotion provides such a channel. The grandest and noblest part of such a thought, ascending to the Logos himself. The response from him is a descent of the divine life, resulting in a great strengthening and uplifting of the maker of the channel, and the spreading all about him of a powerful and beneficent influence, which flows through the reservoir that exists on the higher planes for the helping of mankind. So it means there are so many beings and energies and blessings ready to be offered. They are just waiting for a channel. So if a person or a group of people are doing unselfish prayers for the benefit of the mankind, we actually open this channel. That's why group meditations are very, very important. When we gather in a group and we meditate to bless the whole world, we are opening that channel for the blessings to flow. We get benefit, the whole world will also get benefit. So this can be one of the example of the images. On the left, you see upward rush of devotion, and on the right, you see response to devotion. It's like blessings through this channel come down. It's beautiful. So another thing about the thoughts, meditation upon a master makes a link with him, which shows itself to a clairvoyant vision as a kind of line of light. The master always subconsciously feels the impinging of such a line and sends out along it in response a steady stream of magnetism, which continues to play long after the meditation is over. Regularity in such meditation is a very important factor. Okay, that's why I think in many spiritual schools, they always emphasize on meditating on the guru. It's like so that we get connected with the teacher and then we get benefit, we get blessings through that connection. The next forms produced by people who have mind and emotion well under control and definitely trained in meditation are clear, symmetrical objects of great beauty, often taking well-known geometrical forms, such as triangles, two triangles interlaced, five-pointed stars, hexagons, crosses, and so on. These indicating thoughts concerned with cosmic order or metaphysical concepts. So look at this shape first, but if you want to know more detail, please go back to the previous study session we had on thought forms, because this was part of the book study as well. This image is from the book Thought Forms, actually. You see, it's very geometrical and symmetrical in shape. Okay, some more about the thought forms before we go to the next chapter, which is physical life, before we talk about sleep life. The song of birds shows us curving lines and loops of light from the golden globes of Campanero to the amorphous and sparsely colored mass of the scream of a parrot of Moscow. A purring cat surrounds itself with concentric rosy clouds. I'm not sure how many of you have cats or have had cats before, but I used to have cats, and I remember there were some times that I used to feel, let's say, sad. This cat would come and sit on my chest and purr. And after like 15 to 20 minutes, I used to feel so calm and relaxed and warm and cozy. So basically, this is the reason. Because the purring cat surrounds itself with concentric rosy cloud, which is like loving feeling, A barking dog shoots forth well-defined, sharp-pointed projectiles, not unlike a rifle bullet, which pierce the astral bodies of people and seriously disturb them. A cooing of a pair of doves makes graceful curved forms like the letter S reversed. A child's laughter bubbles forth in rosy curves. These are just examples for our understanding. So most men recognize that acts which injure others are definitely and obviously wrong. But few recognize that it is also wrong to feel jealousy, hatred, ambition, etc., even though such feelings are not expressed in speech or deed. An examination of the condition of life after death reveals that such feelings injure the man who harbors them and cause him acute suffering after death. We will discuss about life after death in the next session. Okay, I remember reading in one of the books that now we think injury is true. Most people think injury is true physical injury. But in future, the generation of humankind is becoming more and more sensitive. So it will reach a point that even thinking negatively about someone will hurt them physically. They may actually really feel pain in their bodies. So physical injury is no longer only through physically hurting someone, but even through thinking negative about them. It also causes physical injury. Some of you may have already experienced that. Someone is angry and is arguing with you. You may feel pain in your solar plexus area or some other parts of your body. Yeah. So that is, as you get more and more sensitive, you feel this kind more and more. Yes, we need a spiritual cord for negative thoughts. But actually, later next chapter, we will see that we don't need a cord actually. If we have so much of negative thoughts like that, they will come to us after death and they will actually really cause suffering. So often it is not possible to render physical aid to those in need, but there is no case in which help may not be given by thoughts, or in which it can fail to produce a definite result. No one need hesitate to use this power to the full, provided always that it be employed for unselfish purposes and for furthering the divine scheme of evolution. So sometimes you may notice that someone needs help, but you are not in a position to help them physically. We can still help them by sending positive thoughts, positive emotions, by blessing. So I remember I heard this from Master Daphne. She said, after learning pranic healing, your hands are no longer normal hands. They are healing hands and blessing hands. So if you see people in need, help them, heal them, bless them, use the hands, uh, to help other people. So we can use our thoughts to help other people.
قیمتش خیلی خوبه نیست؟ تقسیم کن.
Okay, so we talked about thought forms. Now we will talk about physical life. I'm not sure if we get time to talk about sleep dreams after sleep life or not, but let's see how far we can go. Okay, next chapter is about physical life. So the factors which determine the nature and quality of the astral body during physical life may be roughly grouped as follows. First, with the physical life, second, the emotional life, and third, the mental life. First, we talk about the physical life. We have already seen that every particle of the physical body has its corresponding astral counterpart. Consequently, as the solids, liquid, gases, and others of which the physical is composed may be coarse or refined, gross or delicate, so will be the nature of the corresponding astral envelopes. So a physical body nourished on impure food will produce a corresponding impure astral body, whilst a physical body fed on clean food and drink will help to purify the astral vehicle. Okay, that's why the more we go into a spiritual path, we are recommended to become a vegetarian, so that we can have a purer astral body. So the astral body being the vehicle of emotion, passion, and sensation, it follows that an astral body of the grosser type will be chiefly amenable to the grosser varieties of passion and emotion, whereas a finer astral body will more readily vibrate to more refined emotions and activation. I remember one of my cousins is a musician, so I remember hearing from him that sometimes before their plays, some of their teachers recommend them to take like not raw meat, but like rare cooked meat, so that it has a bit of blood and is juicy, so that it, how to say, it aggravate that animal passion, something like that in them. It's a bit gross, but they do it. So this again shows that whatever we eat actually affects our emotions because it affects our astral body. So it is impossible to make the physical body coarse and at the same time to organize the astral body and mental bodies for finer purposes. Neither is it possible to have a pure physical body with impure mental and astral bodies. All three bodies are thus interdependent. So that's why what we eat is very important. Not only the physical body, but also the higher bodies are affected by the food which is eaten. Carnivorous diet is fatal to anything like real occult development, and those who adopt it are throwing serious and unnecessary difficulties in their own way. For flesh food intensifies all the undesirable elements and passions of the lower planes. In the ancient mysteries were men of the utmost purity, and they were invariably vegetarian. So the Raja Yogi takes special pains to purify the physical body by an elaborate system of food, drink, sleep, etc., and insists on foods which are sattvic. So a bit of explanation about different types of foods. The whole system relating to food stuff is built up to help in the preparation of the body for use by the higher consciousness. Flesh foods are rajasic. They come under the quality of activity, being stimulant and build up to express animal desires and activities. They are utterly unsuited to the finer type of nervous organization. The yogi therefore cannot afford to use these for the higher processes of thought. Foods on the way to decay, such as vention, etc., as well as alcohol, are tamasic or heavy and also to be avoided. Foods which tend to growth, such as grain and fruits, are sattvic or rhythmic, being the most highly vitalized and suitable for building up a body sensitive and at the same time strong. Okay, so basically we have three types of food: tamasic, rajasic, sattvic. Tamasic are the food which are on the way to decay. Also alcohol, or they are very heavy, okay, so to be avoided. Second one, rajasic, are the food that are stimulant, make us active, but at the same time, they create a certain type of animal desire and activeness. Then we have the third one, which is sattvic and is pure and is good for spiritual activities, like grain and fruits. Okay, so that's why when we go to Arhadic Yoga, then there are certain recommendations really to follow. Like no smoking, no hallucinogenic drugs, no pork, no fish without scales, really minimizing red meat if possible, get vegetarian, alcohol, red wine in moderation, something like that. Possible no alcohol. So in addition to direct coercioning of the physical and astral bodies, meat tobacco, and alcohol are open also to the serious objection that they tend to attract undesirable astral entities, which take pleasure in the scent of blood and spirits. They surge around the person, impressing their thoughts upon him, forcing their impressions on his astral body, so that the person may have a kind of shell of objectionable entities hanging on his aura. The elementals are attracted towards people whose astral bodies contain matter congenial to their nature. So again, if you have done psychotherapy, you are already familiar with the concept of these elementals and entities. And then we know that addiction to smoking and alcohol, hallucinogenic drugs, attract certain kind of elementals, and therefore we need to do psychotherapy for the person. The astral body may also be affected by such objects as talisman. When an object is strongly charged with magnetism for a particular purpose by a competent person, it becomes a talisman. And when properly made, continues to radiate this magnetism with unimpaired strength for many years. It may be used for many purposes. Thus, for example, a talisman may be charged with thoughts of purity, which will express themselves as definite rates of vibration in astral and mental matter. Okay, so these objects can be used positively or can be used negatively. Another example of positive one would be that of a talisman charged with faith and courage. This would operate in two ways. First, the vibrations radiating from the talisman would oppose feelings of fear as soon as they arose, and thus prevent them from accumulating and strengthening one another, as they often do, until they become irresistible. The effect has been compared to that of a gyroscope, which once set in motion in one direction strongly resists being turned into another direction. Secondly, the talisman works indirectly upon the mind of the wearer. As soon as he feels the beginnings of fear, he will probably recollect the talisman and call up the reserve strength of his own will to resist the undesirable feeling. And a third possibility of a talisman is that of it being linked with the person who made it. In the event of the wearer being in desperate circumstances, he may call upon the maker and evoke a response from him. Okay, so if a certain object is programmed in a certain way, it can affect the person who are using it. Let's say if an object is programmed with faith and courage, it will work in different ways. Number one, it will oppose the feelings, let's say, of fear. Number two, it will improve the will of the person wearing it to resist the feeling of fear. And number three, it may call upon the person who made it, who programmed it, to actually help the person who is in need. Okay, and certain objects are to a large extent natural amulets or talismans. For example, all precious stones, each having a distinct influence which can be utilized in two ways. Number one, the influence attracts to it elemental essence of a certain kind and thoughts and desires which naturally express themselves. Number two, these natural peculiarities make it a fit vehicle for magnetism which is intended to work along the same line. Okay, that's why, you know, crystals are very important, because crystals are natural amulets. Based on the color of the crystal, they already have a certain characteristic. They can be used in a certain way. But if we energize them, if you have done pranic crystal healing, you will know how to do it. If we clean them, energize them, consecrate them, program them, we can even increase their activity and effects. So you see we have different colors. So based on the color, each have a different quality, each have a different purpose. And that purpose can further be enhanced. Okay, other examples like Rudraksha, have you heard about that? The Rudraksha berry, frequently used for necklaces in India, which is especially suitable for magnetization where sustained holy thought or meditation is required, and where all disturbing influences are to be kept away. Another one, the beads of the Tulsi plant, whose influence is somewhat different. So objects which produce a strong scents are natural talismans also. Thus, the gums chosen for incense give out radiations favorable to spiritual and devotional thought and do not harmonize with any form of disturbance or worry. That's why we light incense, because they are also natural talismans. Okay, so you have photo of a Rudraksha and Tulsi beads here. They are used a lot in spiritual societies. Okay, an object such as watch, habitually carried in the pocket, becomes charged with magnetism. Actually, any object that a person uses, it will, after some time, get filled with the energy of the person. So if another person uses it, they may get influenced by the energy of the object. That's why I heard from one of the seniors that second-hand, especially clothes, are not really advisable because they are, they have somewhat the energy of the person who was wearing it before. So if we get them, maybe we need to clean them first before using them because they are impregnated with the energy of the previous users. Even the house, the furniture. Now, if you move into a house, the house has the energy of the previous occupants, the thoughts and emotions of the previous occupants, and they can actually affect us. So we need to do some purifications before that. Okay, so that was about the physical life. Now let's talk about the emotional life. The quality of the astral body is largely determined by the kind of feelings and emotions which constantly play through it. A man is using his astral body, whether he be conscious of the fact or not, whenever he expresses an emotion, just as he is using his mental body whenever he thinks, or his physical body whenever he performs physical work. So the astral body grows by use, just as every other body does. And it also has its own habits built up and fixed by constant repetition of similar acts. So previously in last session, we discussed that emotional body is the body of emotions. So the emotional body gives us the ability to feel and express emotions. And like other bodies, the more we use the emotional body, it grows. It gets stronger. All the activities that we call evil, whether selfish thoughts or selfish emotions, invariably show themselves as vibrations of the coarser matter of those planes, whilst good and unselfish thought or emotion sets in vibration the higher types of matter. As finer matter is more easily moved than coarse, it follows that a given amount of force spent in good thought or feeling produces perhaps 100 times as much result as the same amount of force sent out into coarser matter. If this were not so, it is obvious that the ordinary man could never make any progress at all. Now, this means when we think positive, when we create unselfish thoughts, the effect is 100 times more than when we are creating negative thoughts. Yet, this is the condition of life on earth right now. What does it mean? It means a greater percentage of the thoughts are actually negative thoughts. That's why, although the more pure and unselfish positive thoughts create 100 times more the effect, we are still facing the negative consequences of the negative thoughts. So we need more people to gather together and meditate, create unselfish thoughts, bless the whole world, so that we can do some changes at least. The effect of 10% of force directed to good ends enormously outweighs that of 90% devoted to selfish purposes. And so, on the whole, such a man makes an appreciable advance from life to life. A man who has even 1% of good makes a slight advance. A man whose account balances exactly so that he neither advances nor retrogresses must live a distinctively evil life. Whilst in order to go downwards in evil, a person must be an unusually consistent villain. Deepa is asking, you mean intensity of unselfish thought is very high compared to a selfish thought? Yes, I mean the influence of unselfish thoughts, as said by the book, is more than a selfish, lower negative thought. So it means a pure unselfish thought creates 100 times as much result as the same amount of force sent out in a coercive matter. We are so lucky that that's the case. So it means even if we create 10% positive unselfish thoughts, our evolution is fast. That's what the book says. Such a man makes an appreciable advance from life to life. Now, even if we make only 1% of good thoughts and emotions, we have some advancement. If the person creates mostly negative thoughts, still is like not going backwards, but it's like balance, negative thoughts balancing the good thoughts. Now, for a person to go backwards, they should really be an evil person, consistent villain. We are so lucky that the technology works like that, that God created the world like that. So even with 10%, we can advance fast, lightly. So thus even people who are doing nothing consciously towards their evolution and who let everything go as it will are nevertheless gradually evolving because of the irresistible force of the ego, of the logos, which is steadily pressing them onwards. But they are moving so slowly that it will take them millions of years of incarnation and trouble and uselessness to gain even a step. The method by which progress is made certain is simple and ingenious. As we have seen, evil qualities are vibrations of the coarser matter of the respective planes, while good qualities are expressed through the higher grades of matter. From this follow two remarkable results. It must be borne in mind that each subplane of the astral body has a special relationship to the corresponding subplane of the mental body. Thus, the four lower astral subplanes correspond to the four kinds of matter in the mental body, while the three higher astral subplanes correspond to the three kinds of matter in the causal body. Okay, so every subplane of every plane corresponds to the subplane of the other plane. So means the four lower astral subplane correspond to the four lower mental planes, which we call it lower mental. And the three higher subplanes of the astral plane correspond to the three higher planes of the mental, which we call the causal plane or the higher mental plane. So it means any good which a man develops in himself is permanently recorded by a change in his causal body, while the evil which he does feels, or thinks cannot possibly touch the real ego. Ego means higher soul, but can cause disturbance and trouble only to the mental body, which is renewed for each fresh incarnation. The result of evil is stored in the astral and mental permanent atoms. The man therefore has still to face it all over and over again until he has vanquished it and finally rooted from his vehicles all tendency to respond to it. So it means whenever we do good things, we create good thoughts, good feelings, unselfish thoughts, we are permanently affecting our causal body. This causes a change in our causal body, in our higher soul. But whenever we create negative thoughts, it's not affecting our causal body. It just affects the mental body, which is the 4 levels, lower levels of the mental plane, and it's renewed every incarnation. But of course, it gets stored in a permanent atom, and that's why we need to face it in future incarnations. Okay, let's see what you have said in the chat. Sajid says, unselfish thoughts are fine and light, so can disperse easily. Selfish thoughts are coarse and heavy. Yes, but because unselfish thoughts are fine and light, they can influence more. Selfish thoughts are coarse and heavy, their influence is lower, is less. And G says, can we use Om or sweeping to remove negative energy from second-hand clothes? Yes, you can clean the clothes. Now with pranic healing techniques, just how we heal a person, we clean a chakra, we can clean an object, we can clean a house. So if you're going to a new house, not a new house, you change your house, but it's a used house before by other occupants, really recommendation is purify the place first before you live in. Because I have heard so many stories that people went to a new place which was lived by other people before, and they developed certain tendencies that they didn't have before, and that created relationship problem for them. If you get a second-hand cloth or, I don't know, furniture, you can clean it first before you use it. Now, of course, what is dirty for one may be clean for another. I don't say clean, but relatively clean for another. I remember hearing this story that one time, and there was a retreat, and then Grandmaster was talking with someone, if I recall correctly the story, and then he had this glass of water and he put his crystal inside the water to get cleansed. The crystal was not so clean, it seems. And then he put that glass of water somewhere, and then one person went and drank that water. And when Master saw, not knowing that there is a crystal inside and this is the purpose, and the person thought this is just water to drink, so drank the water. And then Grandmaster wanted to tell the person, and told the person that, oh, that water, I used it to clean my crystal, but the person who drank it was in a, state of bliss and feeling so nice. So means even the crystal, which supposed to, because the crystal was worn by Grandmaster, of course, it gets the energy of Grandmaster. So that energy for another person was like a blessing. Although he wanted, his purpose was to clean it with that water. Okay, so let's continue. I think we cannot afford to go to sleep. Life is already 8:30. Let's see. Astral matter responds more rapidly than physically to every impulse from the world of mind. And consequently, the astral body of a man, being made of astral matter, shares this readiness to respond to the impact of thoughts and thrills in answer to every thought that strikes it, whether the thoughts come from without, from the minds of other men, or from within, the minds of its owner. An astral body, therefore, which is made by its own owner to respond habitually to evil thoughts, acts as a magnet to similar thought and emotion forms, in its vicinity, whereas a pure astral body acts on such thoughts with repulsive energy and attracts to itself thought and emotion forms of matter and vibration which is similar to it. Okay, so we discussed this already, law of attraction. Whatever is inside, we attract it from outside. So the astral world is full of thoughts and emotions of other men, and that these exert a ceaseless pressure, constantly bombarding every astral body and setting up in it vibrations similar to their own. In addition, there are nature spirits of a low order. I think my internet got disconnected. So let's get back to the slide. So the astral world is full of thoughts and emotions. So in addition, there are nature spirits of a low order which enjoy the coarse vibrations of anger and hatred and throw themselves into any current of such nature, thus intensifying the undulations and adding fresh life to them. Many of the moods to which most people are subject in greater or lesser degree are due to outside astral influences, whilst depression, for example, may be due to a purely physical cause, such as indigestion or chill, fatigue, etc. Even more frequently, it is caused by the presence of an astral entity who is himself depressed and is hovering around either in search of sympathy or in the hope of drawing from the subject the vitality which he lacks. Okay, so it means, as we discussed, we are living in an ocean of thoughts and emotions, and we are affected by them. That is the reason why the retreat places are usually outside the city, in a mountain, or ashrams. They're outside the city, they are in a mountain, they're near the beach. There's somewhere in nature which is far from the city, because living in the city itself, we are affected by so many thoughts and emotions which may not be ours. So that's why if you go to GMCK's or Hatha Yoga Ashram, even from a certain radius, you feel the presence of, the energy of the ashram. Suddenly your mind feels very calm, very relaxed. You feel a kind of blissfulness. And then when you go inside, you don't feel those thoughts, vibrations, and energies anymore. So if you stay there for a while, I heard someone was staying there for a month or so, and when the person went back to the city, the person could feel her body vibrating, because ashram was relatively very calm and relaxed and blissful and peaceful. So the students should disregard depression, which is a great barrier to progress, and at least should endeavor to let no one else know that he is oppressed by it. It indicates that he is thinking more of himself than of the master, and it makes it more difficult for the master's influence to act upon him. Depression causes much suffering to sensitive people and is responsible for such of the terror of children at night. The inner life of an aspirant ought not to be one of continual emotional oscillation. And above all things, the aspirant should learn not to worry. Contentment is not incompatible with aspiration. Optimism is justified by the certainty of the ultimate triumph of good. These two things are very important. As much as possible, we need to let go of depression and worry. Because depression makes it difficult to connect with the master, as per the book, with the teacher, with the guru. And then worry, if we have this faith, if we have this thought and belief that good will ultimately triumph, we should not have any worry at all. The effect on the astral body caused by astral vibrations of another astral body has long been recognized in the East, and is one of the reasons why it is such an immense advantage to a pupil to live in close proximity to one more highly evolved than himself. An Indian teacher not only may prescribe for his pupil special kinds of exercises or study in order to purify, strengthen, and develop the astral body, but also by keeping the pupil in his neighborhood, physically seeks by this close association to harmonize and attune the pupil's vehicles to his own. Okay, that's why being in the presence of spiritual practitioners, teachers, gurus is important for our progress, because the astral bodies affect one another. Okay, so group meditations in the center, they are much more effective than group meditations via Zoom. So whoever has the opportunity, please join your groups. Don't just do it online. For similar reasons, an Indian who wishes to live the higher life retires to the jungle as a man of other races, withdraws from the world, and lives as a hermit. This is just what we discussed just now, that the reason why some of the retreat houses are outside, retreat places are outside the city, this is to be far from the contamination of the thoughts and emotions in the city. This is about shield. It is possible by an effort of will to make a shell of astral matter on the periphery of the astral aura. This may be done for three purposes. Number one, to keep out emotional vibrations such as anger, envy, or hatred intentionally directed at one by another. Number two, to keep out casual vibrations of low type, which may be floating in the astral world and impinge upon one's aura. Number three, to protect the astral body during meditation. Such shells do not usually last for long, but need to be frequently renewed if required for any length of time. The ones who have done psychotherapy, you know exactly how to make shields, how to program it, and how to even break it. So please go back to your psychotherapy notes for more detail about shields. Okay, now lastly, the mental life. Our third and last factor which affects the astral body during ordinary waking consciousness is the mental life. The mental activities have the most far-reaching effects on the astral body for two reasons. Number one, because lower mental matter, or manas, is so inextricably linked with astral matter, that it is almost impossible for most people to utilize one without the other. That's why whenever we think, there is also an emotion. Whenever we feel, there is also a thought. Because number two, because the organization and control of the astral body rests with the mind. Without the creative power of thought, the astral body cannot be organized. That's why the mental body is very important, and it affects the astral body. When the mind is not actively controlling the astral body, the latter, being peculiarly susceptible to the influence of passing thought currents, is perpetually receiving these stimuli from without and eagerly responding to them. Okay, so that's why we said previously, if the mind is occupied with a certain thought, the thought form of another person cannot discharge on us. But when there is no thought, the mind is blank, then it's easier for the thought to discharge itself. An ordinary man of our own race is also still living almost entirely in his sensations, although the higher astral is coming into play, but still for him, the prominent question which guides his conduct is not what is right or reasonable to do, but simply what he himself desires to do. The more cultured and developed our beginning to govern desire by reason, that is to say, the center of consciousness is gradually transferring itself from the higher astral to lower mental. And slowly as the man progresses, it moves even further. Okay? So that's why we have different types of will. We have emotional will, we have mental will, we even have higher will. So emotional will is the will which is triggered by desire or emotion. That's why Grandmaster says the will of masses is emotional will and is easily can be triggered by emotional desire. Then mental will is when we think, logically analyze, come up with a certain conclusion. In this way, the lower mental is controlling the astral. But then, as we grow even further, then the higher mental will actually prevail. Then we think, thy will be done. The will of my higher soul shall be manifested. I remember I heard this from Master Ko, if I'm not mistaken. He was sharing that there was some incident happening in US or something, if I recall clearly. Then he asked Grandmaster, what do you want to do with this situation? Then Grandmaster replied, it's not what I want to do. It's what needs to be done. So, still for many people, even if we know what needs to be done, we think, but I don't feel like doing it. And then we don't do it. So it gradually goes to what needs to be done, I need to do it. And then it goes even further, the will of the higher soul to be manifested. Now, if you remember from the solar system study, we said that humanity is still in the fourth round, which should naturally be devoted to the development of desire and emotion. Yet we are engaged in the unfolding of intellect, which is to be the special characteristics of the fifth round. That this is so due to the immense stimulus given to our evolution by the descent of the Lords of the Flame from Venus, if you recall, and by the work of the adepts, who have preserved for us that influence and steadily sacrificed themselves in order that we might make the better progress. It also should be recollected that in the smaller cycle of races, the fifth root race is working at the mind-body, whereas the fourth root race is more especially concerned with the astral body. Okay, so we are in the fourth round. That's why fourth round is more devoted into desire. But we are already developing the intellect because of the work of the Lords of the Flame. So to understand more, you can go back to the study of the solar system. Okay, so the consciousness of man can be focused in only one vehicle at a time, though he may be simultaneously conscious through the others in a vague way. So if a man who has developed astral and mental consciousness focuses himself in the physical brain, as in ordinary life, he will see perfectly the physical bodies of people. And at the same time, he will see their astral and mental bodies, but only somewhat dimly. In far less than a moment, he can change the focus of his consciousness so that he sees the astral fully and perfectly, but in that case, he will see the mental and physical bodies also, but not in full detail. Okay? Thus, in case of a highly developed man whose consciousness has already developed even beyond the causal body, so that he is able to function freely on the Buddhic plane, and has also a measure of consciousness upon the Atmic plane. The center of consciousness lies between the higher mental and the Buddhic plane. The higher mental and the higher astral are in him much more developed than their lower parts. And though he still retains his physical body, he holds it merely for the convenience of working in it, and not in any way because his thoughts and desires are fixed there. Such a man has transcended all karma which could bind him to incarnation, and his physical body is therefore retained in order that it may serve as an instrument for the forces of the higher planes to reach down even to the physical plane. Now, what does it mean? It means that for people who still have lessons to learn, we incarnate because there is a lesson to learn, and because our consciousness is still not yet very high to this Buddhic plane and Atmic plane and causal plane. Okay, so as long as there is a cause to incarnate, we incarnate. But there are some people who doesn't need to incarnate anymore because they have already finished all the lessons. They are already in a certain initiation that they don't need to incarnate anymore. But sometimes they still incarnate. And the reason is to help others, to help the humanity, to serve as an instrument. So, although they have a physical body, their consciousness is not in the physical body. Their consciousness is in the higher mental and higher astral. Okay, so the physical body is there only for the convenience of working in it. Yay! We finished 2 chapters today, but the chapters were quite long and I think detailed. So what do you think? Should we continue sleep life or keep sleep life and dreams for the next session? Can you please reply in chat? Yes? Okay, Deepa says next session. Saji said, so exciting, we want to continue. Haru said, okay, more people says next session. Okay. So next week, we will talk about sleep life and dreams. This is also one of the very important, knowledge that everybody should have, because by knowing about sleep life, we can actually prevent some of the suffering that we may go through, and we may even use it to help other people and ourselves even more. And we also talk about dreams in the next session. Okay, very interesting sessions, but very helpful also, especially for, after this is then the following week. So sleep life and dream life, still a bit similar to life after death, but they help us to be more conscious when we are sleeping and to use it again for our development and also to help other people. Third, yet very interesting topics as well. Okay, so thank you so much for joining this esoteric study on the Astral Body book. I hope you are enjoying. If you have questions, please keep posting in the group. In WhatsApp group, we will try to explain. And if you have any feedback, please give to us. You can give to me or Arkham or in the group. And see you soon in the next session. Thank you so much. Atma Namaste.